So, welcome back to the A to Z challenge. I am trying to talk about mourning. It's something we never talk about very well, and it's advice that all writers really, really need to have because grief is hard business. Um, I, of course, have to learn things the hard way, always the hard way. Um, sometimes grief is sometimes it's something that you can sort of move on from. Sometimes it's something that you can find solace in writing through or from. And sometimes your heart is broken in a different way that you never imagined, and like the words are gone, just gone. And when that happens, one of the problems is you're hurting on the inside, you're hurting on the outside, you can't write, and you get really mad at yourself. Um, this is pretty classical grief stuff if you've ever studied grief. Um, but you might go through this period of time where you're really having a hard time writing, and possibly that's not been a problem that you've had in the past. And you're grieving, and sort of everything is insane and crazy. Maybe it's one of those things where, you know, uh, when big losses happen, we have a tendency to drop things. And because things have dropped, then things get crazier and crazier and crazier. Like, for instance, the bills. Uh, I can remember a time when somebody died in my life, and we didn't pay bills for a while. Not because we didn't have the money, we had plenty of money, but we were trying to do things like arrange funerals and get to funerals and be there and be supportive for friends and family, but still. And so there was sort of this point after which it was like, okay, we gotta get back to the whole paying of bills thing. And somehow during that time, writing didn't happen, obviously. But then, you sit back down to write. You've gotten to the point to where you're paying the bills again. Woo! Yay! Basic functions down. And you can't write. And why can't you write? Oh, it's like, oh my God, why can't I write? I'm a writer, why can't I write? And then you get really angry with yourself because you can't write. And there's all this time that you're wasting and you're not writing, and there's such a drive to write, produce, produce, produce. And sometimes you have to tell that drive to shut up and take a seat in the back because that's where it belongs. It doesn't belong up front. Grief takes some time. You have to give yourself the opportunity to mourn, and it crops up in weird and strange ways. I read this really beautiful analogy about what it's like when there's a big loss in your life. It's like surviving a shipwreck. And at first, you're only concerned with not drowning, avoiding the actual shipwreck, and finding the bits and pieces of flotsam that are going to help you survive while you're out in the ocean, suddenly alone and not in this great ship. And you're in the middle of a storm, so there are these waves that keep crashing over you and threatening to drown you. And at first, they come, every 5 seconds. You just can't even get away from them. But then over time, days and weeks, the waves get further and further apart. They're still there. And you can be going about your daily business years down the road, and one of these waves will hit you and drown you. And I've found that to be very true of grief. If you're in the part where you're just surviving the shipwreck and you can't write, that's okay. Give yourself the space to grieve and forgive yourself for needing the time. Our society doesn't place a lot of importance on healing and feeling good. It places a ton of importance on production, on accomplishment, on doing. Sometimes, especially when it comes to mourning, it needs to be on surviving, and it needs to be on finding yourself again. Because sometimes when you lose somebody, what you lose is a piece of yourself, and it's big enough that you find yourself in sort of an identity crisis, because who are you without this person? Generally speaking, you will find out who you are pretty quickly, but it can take some time and the words might not be there. So please forgive yourself the time that you need. Forgive yourself this period of time that you need to not be productive. Maybe block it out in your schedule. Be like, there's going to be a couple weeks when I'm not getting anything done. And that might be useful. So give that a shot. Good luck. If you need help or encouragement, please, leave a comment. As long as this is posted here, I will probably be responding. So, good luck.